Welcome back to The Adult Potato. I'm Fiona Tater. We're going to start with a quick summary and then get into the details. So if what we're saying doesn't make sense, give us a couple minutes and it will. We all knew that Gaiter was going to try to pull one last thing before being removed from the board, and he didn't disappoint. We're not saying that the resolution of improving the election process in Wellington was a bad idea. It was just not the right time. And for his political purposes, he needed to be the one that presented it, rather than waiting until the election was actually over and bringing it up then. But since he lost, he would not be able to do that. That would be for the winners to take care of, not the losers, which wouldn't help him and his political purpose at all. So Gaiter put his own interests first, in front of the town's, by trying to ramrod a resolution through at the last minute. Because, in the end, the ideas presented will be looked at in June, without him, so the only thing he gained by trying to force this through was alienating town residents while somehow still being able to take credit for it. But that's nothing new. Also, it's laughable that Gaiter continued to say that he sent the information for the resolution late Thursday night, like that didn't mean Friday. Any business person knows that after close of business on Thursday, any submissions are considered received on the following business day. That's why the front desk at Wellington's admin building date stamps things during business hours. So, it doesn't matter what time Thursday night it was sent. It was officially received on Friday. Here's that whiny clip to start things off.
We submitted the packet information to Mr. Sapienza, to Ms. Garcia on Thursday evening. And then I was informed on Friday evening.
Received it Friday.
I sent it Thursday evening. I understand you got it Friday morning. I sent it Thursday evening. Yes, it was late when I got home that I finished sending it. So the information was sent in the packet that you have in front of you to the town attorney, to the town administrator on Thursday evening. I received an email from the town administrator Friday afternoon or morning, informing that Mayor Shozy had chosen to remove the item from the agenda.
So let me fill you in on what happened if you haven't heard about it already. Also, we recommend you watch the YouTube video and go about an hour in, because all this nonsense happened an hour in and lasted about an hour as well. At open of business, Friday, Dan Sapienza received a resolution, and by the looks of it, it was very long and detailed, to be part of the packet for Tuesday's meeting. You should know that packets go out by Friday for the next meeting to give trustees and the public time to review the material over the weekend before the meeting. Later that day, Town Administrator Garcia let Gaiter and Tits know that the mayor had taken it off the agenda as it was referencing activities for the election that was still taking place, which was not appropriate.
I deemed it out of order due to the fact that we are currently still in the election. The election has not been finalized. It will not be finalized until Friday. I deemed it out of order because of the fact that we were using information from the current election that has still not been finished. And I don't know as though we should be considering something from the election that has not been finalized yet for consideration at this time. In my email, I stated that better time for this would be in May or June to look at this item. So it was deemed out of order due to the fact that we are still in an election, and that's out of order, and I will stand behind that decision.
So the mayor said no on Friday, and for good reason, and so Tits and Gaiter asked to add it to the agenda for that evening, which can be done as long as 2 trustees request it. But by doing that, and not just waiting for the election to be over before bringing it up, that ran the resolution foul of Colorado's open meeting law, as brought up by Trustee Mason.
Per the Colorado Open Meetings Law, any item that is up for consideration, and especially if we're going to have a motion on this, certainly there is a plethora of pages here that I have not had a chance to read. I don't believe most of the board has had a chance to read, and certainly the public has not had a chance to read. These items must be posted at least 24 hours before a public meeting. So, and this is certainly not in emergency resolution. So I would say that this is out of order.
After which, Dan Sapienza gave legal advice outside of executive session because the babies in the room preferred to play games. Here's what Sapienza had to say.
I think that's a correct assessment of Robert's rules. In this case, the point of order was regarding open meetings law. Under Colorado statutes, any act, a policy act of a board or any governing body that is passed without, and I usually would say this in executive session, but that is adopted without proper notice, and that's without 24 hours notice to the public, could be voided in court. An action on an item that wasn't given public notice, and whether for the reason for that is somewhat irrelevant to the statute. There was no public notice to this item, therefore the public is not on notice that elections will be discussed tonight. So under the open meeting law, I would highly recommend that the board not take formal action on this item. A discussion of the item could take place, but no formal action should take place. That would be my recommendation.
And somewhere around here, Squirrel's first lie of the night came out. Well, maybe not a lie because she's clueless about process, so her lack of knowledge showed. Fortunately, several on the board are tired of her shit at this point and shot it down immediately.
Mayor, I have my hand raised as I would like to point out that this information was sent to all of us as trustees last week.
It was not.
No, it was not, Trustee T.
If this is a glimpse of what's to come with the new board and not taking her shit anymore, I'm all for it. At some point, Trustee Mason reminded us that this is not the time for this resolution, and that there are intentions to look at moving elections to November anyway, in which case none of these recommendations are necessary as the election will be run under state rules by the county. Here's that clip.
I would also highlight the point that I had brought up a number of meetings back, which was that I would very much like to see our elections coordinated with Larimer County. And I think there was some discussion about bringing this to a ballot item in November, in which case most of these points are moot.
So yes, Tits, all the changes will be moot, meaning of little or no practical value, because the elections will be run by the county. The changes being suggested would have no value if Wellington isn't running the election. So the discussion does not need to happen until the potential November move is decided upon. And if that does go to the ballot, it will be on the November ballot for a vote, and that can be administered by the county if the board so decides. Then, at some point, Squirrel's husband had something to say about it. She must not know about the mute button. Mute, not moot. Just to be clear. Here's that outburst.
That is Dan Sepian's.
I guess he's back in town to visit the family after moving to Florida. Not sure when Squirrel is moving, but not soon enough. Rebecca, always the voice of reason, gave us her position, echoing that there was absolutely no need for the topic to be brought up at that time. Remember, there was still an election going on. The results were not official, and it's not like there was going to be another election anytime soon.
We are discussing the most basic right of Americans and people who live in Wellington without them knowing that we are, and that is wholly inappropriate. And after many opportunities of highlighting that, continued to proceed. And that in itself degrades the confidence of our governance in the role that we represent here, representing the people of Wellington. Although I understand and want always elections to be as inclusive, accessible as possible, the timing is completely unnecessary to discuss it today.
And finally, Mayor Chaussee reiterated his position to make sure that it was clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of great stuff here. I just think that the timing is incorrect. Since we are still currently in the election, of which the, what are they called? What do you put them here? The poll watcher 2 and poll watcher 1, I believe. Those statements are from this current election, the one that is ongoing at this point in time, and will not be completed until Friday. That is the whole reason I didn't think that this item was in order for us to be discussing. We're now here discussing it. And I think this is something that we need to move forward with the future board at a future date and time once the election has been completed. That's where I stand.
And while Squirrel rightfully states in this next clip that this resolution was not technically brought up as an emergency resolution, this is one of those instances of, tell me you want it to be an emergency resolution without saying it's an emergency resolution.
One of my additional comments was that this was not treated as an emergency meeting. That was never the generalized idea behind it. Yes, so my question relates to, is there a way that we can notice this item and then bring it back under a special meeting this week? Is that an opportunity to notify public but also address the concerns?
So, basically, this was politically driven to try to rush something through before the new trustees were seated. In her own words, she was pushing for it to be brought back in a special meeting so a lame duck trustee could have a political win, or something more nefarious since the board currently only has 6 trustees. If they played their cards right and had Chaucer, Mason, and Daly raise a motion, they could kill it and get what they wanted by default. Can't trust Tits or Gaiter to be transparent. They're very much into playing games. And the Gaiters are very good at that. Now that all is clear and Gaiter's power play was exposed, let's move on to the recount that Mario, who came in last place, sponsored. Well, we doubt he sponsored it personally since there are still the 2 unpaid warrants in Amarillo showing. You can get information on looking those up via several posts in Let's Talk Wellington or the less right-wing Facebook group of Wellington Community Conversations. There might be info on the Adult Potatoes Facebook page as well. The verbal gymnastics that went on during the trustee meeting to somehow praise Ethan Moose for his work on the election while simultaneously lambasting everything about it was phenomenal, even though it was very apparent that election integrity was the theme and why do a recount if you trust the results. So we'll see what his next financial report of contributions shows. That recount was done today, Sunday. And the recount was no big surprise with less than 1% change, and Ed actually picked up a few more votes. But we knew that. Ethan Moose did a great job within the specific requirements of a municipal election. But with all the bitching and moaning, it would be well worth it to move it to November and let the county deal with it. It's 100% not worth the grief of dealing with backseat drivers. Here's a big shout out to Ethan Moose from the Adult Potato for dealing with the backstabbing with a level of professionalism that is far above what was shown by the trustees that added their last-minute resolution to the agenda. Here's where the Adult Potato stands in this whole mess. We're with Trustee Mason and adding a ballot measure for the November general election where town residents can vote on moving our trustee and other regular election items to November to correspond with Larimer County's elections. That way, the elections will be run under the state's regulations, which, as Town Attorney Sapienza alluded to, Wellington cannot completely adhere to. We can do a lot of it, but not everything, because we're a small town. And if that passes, we don't need to implement any changes because we won't be running the elections. So, like Trustee Mason said, the entire resolution will be a moot point. And there's no reason to pass a resolution that will never be followed. It's best to wait to see if we move to November elections before wasting time on something that may never happen. And for all the bitching and moaning that Gaiter did about the extra cost of mailing out ballots to everyone in town, the cost to bring our little election up to state standard could cost far more than that. On the plus side, by moving the elections to November, we may be able to get more residents to participate in our local elections. If it's on a ballot that they're likely to be voting on already with county, state, and national elections, maybe they'll go ahead and vote for Wellington's ballot items too. All in all, we cannot wait for the new board to be seated and making policy. We're hoping that we'll have some drama-free meetings where the town will get real business done, and the show will be able to focus more on what's happening in town outside of the shit-stirring that's been going on. Between Sparge Brewery, Sparge-Toberfest, Slurps, the T-Bar, Main Street, and more, there's a lot going on this spring, and we haven't been able to cover it. We haven't even mentioned the Manners Kentucky Derby event next weekend. There's going to be live music, a live auction with a trip to Tuscany and Africa, and even a Derby hat contest. I mean, come on, give us a break. The action of certain trustees have been writing all the content for us. Here's hoping that we'll be able to focus more on the fun things happening in town, but we're not holding our breath. Oh, and if you're looking to sign the recall petition that's going around for Teats, We'll put a link on the show's Facebook page and in the YouTube notes for the show of how to meet up with someone to sign it. Have a great week, although it looks like our crazy spring weather may be a bit fussy. And remember to lock your doors. LCSO has enough to deal with.